Hi, everyone. Peace. My name is Latrice. I'm in my second year of college. I go to Howard University. My major is Afro American Studies, and my minor is Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. Like I said, I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm very proud to be from this city, and I do Pan African organizing both here at home and then also in DC, which is also where I met Dr. Kim. So I'll just pass it on to her.
Thank you, Latrice. It's really good to be here in community, the IBFA. I'm Kimberly Monroe, an organizer here in Washington, D.C. with Pan African Community Action. We organize in Southeast D.C. around community control of police. And I'm also a professor of history and Africana studies at Trinity Washington University. Again, really excited to be here and to learn from the elders. And I will pass it to Mama Synovia in the tradition of letting
All
our
right.
elders speak.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited about this conversation. I'm Mama Synovia. Starting at the top, I'm a member of the National Hookup of Black Women, the Birmingham chapter. I'm also a yogi. I teach yoga in the community. I'm also a community activist, so I go wherever I'm called. I said earlier that I'm this chair, this rocking chair revolutionary, because I will never not be a revolutionary.
Mm.
So I started when I was younger, a lot of time having babies that I consider babies for the revolution. Didn't all turn out that way, but you know. Anyway, I've been in several organizations and I've retired from nursing. So I'm currently living in Birmingham, Alabama. And as I said earlier, I hold a space for young people. That's one of the things that we do when we get older. We hold spaces so that we can still sit in circles and hear the ideas and the actions of young people and support them, in the best of who they are, of course. So I'll stop with that. And I have six children and a 10th grandbaby on the way. His name is Zen, and he's in Mississippi. Peace and blessings. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Okay. Well,
And
I
other elders are Bazar Sada.
yes, thank you, Mama. Again, thank you for being here. I am Zasada Shakur. I am the Director of Black Power for the International Black Freedom Alliance. I am also a member, a new inductee of the National Hookup of Black Women, the Birmingham chapter, where I get to be with my mama all the time. So it's I love it, and we're always just like Mama said, organizing. I don't know if we're not organizing, we're probably at the reggae club. But after that, we still go back to organizing because that's just like she said. It never stops. It never stops. There's no shortage of things that we can be fighting for.
Mm.
I'm also an educator, a particularly African centered homeschool educator with my husband Bomani. Um, like I said, I'm here to make sure that we are liberated in every way possible and to support each person's mission and getting us, liberated. It looks different from each one of us, and I'm here to support everybody in their way.
Ashe.
Gosh, man. Well, we're here to not only celebrate the work of the elders and those who are here today, but also those who have come before us and laid this groundwork, our ancestors, and those who have built a foundation for us to stand on in this struggle. And so this month is Black August. And within that tradition, Black August is a month specifically designated to pay tribute to the true heroes, the martyrs, and history of new African Black people in our struggle for liberation against the 400 years of violent repression, suffering, and exploitation that we've endured under the systems of bondage here in the Western Hemisphere and globally. Many important events and lives of people that occurred and contributed to our struggle fell within this month of August and coincide with our need to know, remember, and commemorate the people and events that have fed the flames of our struggle to yet be free. And so we think of George Jackson, W.L. Nolan, Jeffrey Joka Katari Golden,
Okay.
Dr. Matulu Shakur,
Ashe.
Afia Bukhari, and so many others. The list goes on. And we also think about those who are still struggling um, in the prison system, like Mumia Abu Jamal,
Ashe.
Baronza Bowers. Oh, the list again goes on. And so today we're specifically here to engage in conversation around that and Assata Shakur, who many of us have met in our consciousness and intellectual journeys as activists and organizers. And so, with that, I'll pass it to Latrice to get us started.
Yeah. So the first question I have for you, Mama Sinovia, is well, you told us a little bit about yourself and the different organizations that you're a part of, but I'm curious about how you became active in the struggle toward Black liberation. Like, what was that moment where you were radicalized and felt that you needed to take it upon
Mm.
yourself to engage in the movement?
Wow. Wow. Okay. So that's really interesting. So I was in a relationship in in the 60s with a brother who was running from the draft. And he told me that there's this underground network that we needed to align with so that he could get from point A to point B without having to serve. That was my first, and I must have been maybe 19. Before that, I had been studying. Of course, I was way on a natural. Of course, I considered myself kind of a nationalist in many ways. However, it was meeting him and him in that underground network that got me to meet people that were part of SNCC, that were a part of revolutionary movements, because here they are taking these brothers primarily uh, underground. So that was the beginning. And I'd always been in study groups with people in Jackson, Mississippi, around religion primarily. So from that, I went into like the Nation of Islam. And then a lot of my learnings came from the nation, understanding that we are, in fact, uh, where we are. Like we need a nation. So the Nation of Islam was my physical end. The Brother Underground was my political end, and the nation was political too. And then just having children and recognizing that freedom ain't free. That we really got to struggle and own it. Yeah. So that was the beginning for
Wow.
me.
Okay,
Thank you.
of course, yes. And hello, Elder Muja. I see that you came back on. We're glad to
Yeah,
have you here.
I got onto my laptop instead of my phone.
Perfect. Yes. Well, I hope this isn't like me springing it upon you, but we just started the interview question. So I just asked Mama Sinovia our first question, and so I'll just ask you the same one.
Okay.
And so could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first became active in the struggle toward Black liberation? Like, when were you radicalized?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the question and for the opportunity to be with you all. I really appreciate it. Um, in some ways, I feel like when I reflect back over my life in my early childhood, I realized that I always was a little different from my peers. And that I had had a sort of an interesting experience when I was about 7 years old. And I could remember looking up in the sky and just having that, what you would call like an existential experience of kind of deep wondering about like, what is this reality? So all through middle school, by the time I got to high school, in the late 60s, a lot of things were going on. The Black Power movement was very much alive, and of course, the Civil Rights movement had been very much alive. And so I got involved in a lot of the activities when I was in high school in 1968. We got involved with boycotting and sitting in, even at the high school and making our demands. um, I graduated from high school. And also my father had been someone, both my mom and dad were Christians, but my father in particular was very open. So he would invite the different people that would come and knock on the door and sell papers, whether it was the Jehovah Witnesses or the Seventh Day Adventists, um, the Black Panthers, the Nation of Islam. And so I was exposed to a lot of things. And he took us to see Stokely Carmichael and
Mm.
um, when they came to Detroit. And I went away to college, and then I did also join the Nation of Islam when I was 19. Everybody seemed to be joining something. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I made a conscious decision at that time not to pledge, even though I had been approached by both Deltas and AKAs, but I was already, a budding revolutionary. But I went into the nation as opposed to joining, the Black Panthers or any of the other groups, SNCC, because I found in the nation, more of a spiritual system and more of a holistic approach. A lot of the other groups were just a little bit too rowdy for me. So I did the nation for 10 years, and I was a very devout member of the nation. We did everything by the book. I learned to fast, I learned to pray, and most importantly, I learned that we were the original people. So
Mm.
I moved on. I moved out to California, um, and also found, sort of what you would call your family or your tribe of alternative folks, cultural people. And that's when I met Ahmed Obafemi it was in the early 80s when he came to Oakland to speak. And I happened to be there along with a whole bunch of other people, but some kind of way we connected. So whenever he would come to the Bay Area, I would typically host him. He got me involved with the New African. Well, I never really joined the New African Independence Movement, but I was on the fringe of it for many years. But he did get me involved with the movement to free political prisoners.
Mm.
And that's where I learned a lot about nationhood and the counterintelligence programs and all of that. And again, I put my heart and soul into it for 10 years and worked to free Geronimo Pratt and learned a lot. Learned a lot. So I've been married twice. I have two adult daughters and five grandchildren, and we're blessed. All of those, my two adult daughters and my grandchildren, all live here in Tuskegee. Yeah.
Wow.
And so all of what I've done up until this point has dovetailed into the Nature's Garden for Victory and Peace,
Mhm.
creating an intentional community where we hope to attract people of like mind that want to build and work together to create a viable community.
Wow. This
Powerful.
is yeah, this is awesome. I mean, I think what I'm hearing, these beautiful stories about how you all became really active and radicalized in this moment, and the way that you continue that right in your life today, and how you build upon those traditions, and even the legacy of your families, right, also being a part of this struggle and getting to learn more from you. One of the questions that we have is, especially with both of you being very much involved in the Nation of Islam and other formations, what was it like, during that time when you initially started to organize, being a Black woman, specifically engaged in this work toward Black liberation? Did people underestimate you? Was there tension within your families? What were some of the experiences that you dealt with as a Black woman, right, in this struggle?
Interesting. Yes, I'm just gonna, because being that the nation was like my first home, of course, I was all about preparing family and then community. So during the time of movement work, I was having babies. So I had a baby in in 1970, in 1972, in 1974, in 1975.
Wow.
I was having children and trying to make sure that those children were educated
Mm,
in, in the way I was trained that they would be educated. Of course, I was an MGT, uh, Muslim girl in training. So all about cooking, all about, keeping a house, all about rearing children. However, always making sure that even in that I had a voice. So even though I was a Muslim girl in training, I also was a woman who spoke out, who asked questions.
mm,
Throughout my life, like not in a way that's it was in that feminine way that I was trained to be, to ask it easy, like, and that's kind of my personality too. But I've always been involved in people who are uh, conscious about women's involvement, even in the nation.
mm,
So the people that I was around in the nation, one was my husband, Curtis Muhammad, who was also in SNCC, who was also in community,
mm,
who understood the necessity of women being out front.
mm,
So even when I didn't want to be, and I got to change a diaper and nurse a baby and fix the food, be out front, speak up, because all of that's valuable. All of that is valuable. So my training was into speaking up for what I knew was right and also doing it respectfully, which, is important too, I think. And I'll stop there.
Mama Muja.
Yeah. Honestly speaking, I never felt disenfranchised
Mm,
as a woman, as a Black woman. And I don't know if it was because I had a fantastic father
mm,
who was so proud of us. He and my mom had five girls and one boy. But my dad was a fantastic example of manhood. He was a gentle spirited man. And most of the men that I dated over the years and married were also nice men.
mm,
I never had a man to put his hands on me. I've never had a man to curse me. And I found myself in years when the women's liberation thing came of vogue, um, sort of a bit perplexed. And sometimes I would sit with groups of women and they would talk about their strong dislike or uh, opposition, or just negative about the brothers, and I
mm,
realized that was a real story for a lot of women, but I would always have to say to them, it wasn't my experience. Even my brother married a woman. He had two children, and when they divorced, he kept custody of the children, and he learned to braid his daughter's hair. He went to the PTA meetings. He was a fantastic provider. He remarried. He remarried another woman who had like four children, so they became a blended family. Um, I don't know. So I think sometimes it's about the energy that a woman puts out and what she attracts around her. You
yeah.
know, because it just had not been my experience. I always knew the power of the Black woman, and a lot of that came, I think, out of the nation. Even though a lot of people think that the Muslims um, kind of put down the woman, but I felt that they lifted us up.
Mm,
They
mm,
wanted to protect us. I mean, why not?
mm,
I like that. Um, I rather enjoy the trying to find that balance of masculine and feminine energy, you know. And I like it when a man can show his feminine energy, and I like it when a woman can show her masculine energy. And I think that that's really what we should be trying to understand at a deeper level, is that we have to do what's necessary. You know, it's like there's a saying, or I read it somewhere, that the Black woman is the only woman that can carry, a AK-47 or whatever that it is, strap a baby on her back, and
Mm.
bake an apple pie at the same
Mm.
time. You
Come
know
on.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, those kinds of images of, and I like the fact that Black women are seen as strong, because we are, but it shouldn't be to the extreme that we aren't also tender, and that we want to be loved and cared for. But we are strong. We just can't help it. That's who we are. We're the mothers. We're the mothers of civilization, you know. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's a loaded question because you have to think about all, your family, being an organizer, and all of the different components that goes with being a Black woman in general. So thank you both for answering that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to piggyback, not piggy. What other back can I be
That's
on?
okay. We got you.
Yes, I was thinking, and we, as women, we have multifaceted ways that we live and grow and develop. And when I was in the New African Peoples Organization, one of the things that, if you're in or coming from a strict like Nation of Islam and then going into uh, a revolutionary type organization, one of the things that manifested itself was sexism,
Mm.
and how sexism is ingrained in the fiber of was ingrained in the fiber of many organizations. And we created we called it New African Women's Task Force, that took on this question of sexist oppression. It's just one of the leading oppressions that Black women in general go through. Is this whole question of not being treated uh, holistically.
Mm.
And that was an experience inside of an organization, not inside of my family necessarily, but having to grapple for my voice to be heard.
Yeah.
I know that from that, like, like having to understand that you said something, talking to my husband, that's in one way, and I said it in another way, and the response always comes back to what he said. So I've had those experiences, even though I've had two of the best, relationships, both revolutionary, both in movement, both who loved Black people considerably, both who had some sexist tendencies,
Mm.
as were some of our major leaders.
Mm.
So it for many of us, well, oppression is interlinked around many things, and I just wanted to say that I've experienced sexism in political organizations,
Mm.
and like my sister said, was strong enough and had enough voice, and knew that it had to, in some ways, be talked about. So we created ending sexist oppression as a tenet of organization.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I
Yes.
love all them other things about us as Black women. Yes, we
Yeah.
are strong, we are powerful, we are independent, we're also interdependent,
Mm-hmm.
and we lean on each other. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that, just in terms of what on a political agenda sometimes what happens.
Yes. And
Before
thank you.
Latif, oh, really, yeah, thank you. Before she asks the next question, I just want to say it seems like our next session and conversation with you all needs to be about revolutionary love, and
Ah,
and what that looks like, because we don't talk about that enough in the struggle, right? Having a partner that supports you also in this movement and in this work. So, thank you all for sharing those detailed stories.
Yeah.
Yes. I agree. Thank you all both for sharing that. And it made me think about like the commitment to Black liberation. Like, what does that entail? For me, like, it makes me think about just kind of like really analyzing the things that like I've internalized, whether that be, you know, sexism or anti-blackness or homophobia and transphobia, because like I identify as a queer person. And I think that in a lot of our political organizations, like that is definitely something that should be talked about more. Just like that commitment to actually living a revolutionary lifestyle and not perpetuating things that Europeans have taught to us. My next question is, what are some of the core values of being a freedom fighter? When we say that we're committed to the liberation of Black people, like what are some things that we need to, you know, value?
Hmm,
Or oh, I'm
that's a
sorry.
really good question.
Is that for any?
Well, we could probably make a long list of things, of characteristics. I think first and foremost, you have to have a deep and abiding love for your people.
Mm,
Um, I think that we have to be knowledgeable and aware too of our history, not just the recent history, but the ancient history as well. The knowledge of self is a knowledge that is probably the most critical of all. So, knowledge of self sort of breeds a type of self love, and really being able to understand the tricks that have been played and that are still being played. You know, and that's one of the things in the Nation of Islam is like they used to say, "Can you fool a Muslim?" And the answer was, "Not nowadays." But
Not
I think that
nowadays.
those teachings really taught us to see through the veil.
mhm,
And it's a lot of things that I watch on the news on a daily basis, and I'm already saying, you know, like what's even like this recent thing in Hawaii. You know, my mind automatically is saying, yeah, that was probably done. You know, I mean, yeah, I believe in climate justice and climate change and whatnot, but you know, we see these kinds of things that happen, and they typically happen for some reason
mm,
that is being done from an imperialist standpoint. So, though, you know, I'll start the list off by saying self knowledge,
mm,
um, a real good understanding of the our sojourn as a people, and where we lost things, and you know the elements of struggle, um, and then deep commitment.
Mm, yes, I would ditto that. Um, all that she said. I think it's, when we said we were talking around Assata, I went back through her book, and I'm just going to
Mhm.
share one of the things that I think speaks to one of the things that I would uphold is that we cannot be afraid,
mm,
Mhm.
that we have to stand up, that we like intolerance. But she said, every day out in the streets now, I remind myself that Black people in America are oppressed.
mm,
It's necessary that I do that because people get used to anything. She says, the less you think about your oppression, the more your tolerance for it grows. After a while, people just think oppression is the normal state of things. But to become free, you have to be acutely aware of being a slave.
mm,
I
Mhm.
think it's just,
What page
so
is that
much,
on? I want to.
so
I
much is
like.
happening. That's uh 262.
Okay, thank you.
That we live, I mean, if you look at the prison system, if you look at all the killings of Black men and Black women by police brutality, if you look at these things, if you look at racism, there's an innate thing happening in this country around us,
mm,
which, I mean, we're doing great in many levels, but here we are at Black August, and Black August probably should be every darn day, because something is always happening. Anyway, we just have to stand up and not be afraid, because anyway, yeah, standing up is important, like not backing down and doing it with sense, like sense, being having sense around our struggle, like having a commitment and being smart. And things are changing a lot. I mean, people are organizing now, like internet revolution, I think, is happening. So I don't know nothing about that, but I think it's a good tool for organizing. So if we're going to organize our people, we have to understand who we are as individuals and organize our lives ourselves, so that we can be authentic
Yeah.
about what's happening with Black people in America.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned earlier, and I don't want to forget this, because I do have a memory kind of thing. You said you was international. You were in an international organization, like a global. It sounds global to me, and I think that's very important, that we are uniting around, other people who are also just as oppressed, mostly Africans. But yeah, I'm I'm
Mhm.
I'm complete.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank
I think that we're not lacking access to values, because we
Mhm.
have those seven primary principles of
Yes.
Ma'at. We have that. I mean, the 42 negative confessions, but we have those seven principles of Ma'at. And
Yeah.
then we also have the principles of the Nguzo Saba, that if we
Yes.
would just truly embrace those and really struggle to live those principles.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is really, really key that often gets overlooked is the deep transformational work that each individual must do,
mm,
which I think is why it's difficult for us to unite at this point. Every time we try to come together, there's some kind of fallout that happens,
Mm.
even in our personal relationships and communications with the people that we love the most.
mhm, mhm,
We don't listen very well. We're triggered by so many different kinds of emotional things, and we don't know how to have a sit down and a real insightful, loving, caring, but critical conversation with each other
mhm,
without divorcing. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So that's one of the things that I'm really committed to trying to bring into this intentional community, is that there would be the expectation that people would fully participate in ongoing circle work, you know, but we prepare you for that. We don't just throw you in there, but there's a lot that has to be said and understood, like about the ground rules,
mm,
you know. Um, but we just really have to learn and get our egos intact and let things kind of start to roll off of us in a way, because we know that we're not as articulate as we need to be when it comes to loving each other and being able to correct one another
mm.
from a loving space. We haven't been taught how to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important value.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If we're
Yeah.
going to build unity, we've got to be able to stick it out. We can't, like, keep starting, stopping, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What I'm hearing, just to kind of summarize some of what you both said, is knowledge of self,
Mhm.
absolutely, a deep commitment and love, for yourself, but also for the people, and standing up, right, in terms of having principles and an analysis against this fight, and within this struggle. And
Mm-hmm.
so, Mama Sonovia, you brought into the space Asada Shakur's autobiography, which I also have right next to me. And so I think is a perfect segue into the questions that we have centering Assata Shakur in this conversation. This is the Action for Assata campaign. And so I'll just, ask both of you, how did you come to learn about Assata Shakur? How has she impacted your political, and ideological worldview?
Yeah, so I'll start. I did, of course, the first time I heard Asada's name, remember y'all, I'm in Mississippi in the woods having babies. But my mother was a teacher at Rikers Island. And when Asada was there, she called me and she said, "You know this Joanne Chassamar?" She said, "I met her." She said, "Y'all got to be careful with this black thing." You know, she was just talking her up like really, like people are really watching her. And that was my first inkling kind of thing. And then, of course, I get a book, I read it, and then I go to Cuba and I meet her in her now she's there uh, thing. And I went as a part of an organization, a new African organization, uh, to talk about, ironically, sexism in movement, and that's how I got to meet her. So we had a task force that went to Cuba, and then it was around Kwanzaa too. We also talked about the principles of Kwanzaa. So that's the only time I've actually met her and actually had conversation around struggle, and she's definitely she's powerful. She's powerful, and we are so blessed that she's still here.
Mhm.
Uh, and just reading her book, I would put it on everybody's let's read list. Just and many of our lives kind of honor that, coming out of the civil rights movement, going into the human rights movement, and divesting. But even now, as I went back through it, I was thinking, wow, we should do poetry for Assata because she
Mhm.
writes beautifully. And
Yes.
some of those poems, I mean, they just clearly are educational in and of themselves. So yeah, but that's my mother first meeting her and talking to me about her, and then of course understanding, all the signs that Asada is welcomed here, those
Mhm.
things, just that political education around her. And
Mhm.
then meeting her, I was on a whole nother wow, you know,
Yeah.
human being. She is a human being.
Yeah.
She is a family person. She is a loving, beautiful, intellectual,
Mhm.
humanistic, all of those things. And I'll
Mhm.
end with that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can't remember when I first came to know about her, but it was certainly intensified when I started doing the work to free political prisoners, and that was in the 80s. But I also had the opportunity to go there 3 times. The first time I went was with the Venceremos Brigade.
Mhm.
I don't know if you all are familiar with that organization, but that was one of the ways that you could go to Cuba without getting in trouble with the state. And she came and met our group, and as Mama Zenobia has described, I mean, she's physically very attractive. She had long, long locks, and there was a girlishness about her too. Even though she's this like amazing, powerful woman, there was something very soft and very girlish about her. She made you feel really comfortable. You didn't feel like you were with somebody like a superstar, which she is. She's more than a superstar, but I felt really comfortable in her presence. Um, Very kind. She came to my defense during one time when um, quite remember the details, but she would send messages. I think it was a thing about the role of the revolutionary. Like that there are these like really hardened people. That was one of the things that was really hard about the political prisoners work because a lot of the people that were involved, were ex-prisoners and they were still fighting over body count. There was still beef going on. Um, and with my background, like I probably came across as like a little young, naive thing, because I had never had a gun pointed in my face or a boot put on my neck. And that was exactly what somebody asked me once. They said, "Have you ever, had that?" And I said, "No." And those are the types of experiences that we need to understand about each other. When I was with the revolutionaries, I was seen as somebody naive and kind of, you know, so I don't know if that was sexism or because there were a lot of powerful women that would, that weren't being seen in that way. But yeah, Asada is just a multifaceted, multi-talented woman. I was so impressed with her ability to, she's been over there a long time, but she speaks fluent Spanish. And I always imagine that, God willing, that when she comes back
Mm,
home, and she still wants to come back home, even though she's been over there all these years, she longs to come back to the States. I just imagine that one day she'll be a force that could help to unite the Spanish speaking people
mm,
with the Black people, or with the people of the new African people or the people of African descent. Um, and so I long for that to happen, for her to return here. Um, so the other two times that I met her was during a time right 2000, 2001. And I was working again with Mama Sanovia's ex-husband, Ahmed Obafemi. And there was several groups of people that were organizing to have an international campaign, an international conference in Cuba to free political prisoners.
mm,
And that was being sponsored by one of the government agency, OSPAL, in Cuba. And so I had the opportunity to travel over there, like I said, on two occasions. And Ahmed was, I guess he was living where was he living? In New York, or was he living in Alabama in 2000, 2001?
Yeah, Alabama.
Okay. So we traveled, I don't even remember. I guess we connected once we got there. I don't remember. But it was a very, very enlightening experience. And I was so blessed to just be in her company. She gave me a gift, I gave her gifts. I had taken two books over there, and she signed both of the books. One of them I gave to my daughter, and the other I kept for myself. And when 9/11 came about in 2001, they canceled the conference, so we never had it. But as you've said already, she's a prolific writer, thinker, poet. I love her. One of the poems where she is it's called "Carry It On."
Ah,
Carry on. That's one of my favorite.
yes.
And I
yeah.
use that tag a lot. Carry on the tradition. Carry on the tradition to freedom.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you
Well,
both
thank
for sharing. Oh, go ahead. I just can't believe that y'all both met her. Like, my goodness, like that is so cool. Um,
incredible.
She's very feminine too, like she likes to wear jewelry and she puts stuff in her hair. Yeah, she's hard hitting and she tough. She's a revolutionary, but she's also very feminine.
what I would like to know is where were you both when she was liberated?
When she was liberated, that was in 79 or something.
79. Yeah, November 2nd, 1979.
I was in Detroit. I was living in Detroit, which is where I was born. And I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of
Mm,
that whole piece during that time period. It's something about being in the Nation of Islam that sort of, you end up kind of having blinders on about whatever else might be happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't remember. I think I might have been back in New York. I was trying to look at having a baby, getting a divorce, what happened, where was I? And I'm not even. I'd have to do some math, and it would take me a moment. But yeah.
mm. Wow. Suzada, I know you wanted to chime
Mhm.
in.
Yes. Well, first of all, my elders. That's why I love my elders, y'all. They're dope. They real, and they, like I said, they've lived this. So it just, they teach without even trying because this is their life and their life's mission. And particularly, me and my husband thought about these three particular. Mama Sukari, she's having some issues. She's way out in Jemison in the, on her family compound, so she does have issues sometimes with connection. But um, just how they've always kept Assata alive, whether they knew it or not. Just being around them, they exude that. And I'm just so grateful to be able to have them on the campaign, first of all. I mean, just like I said, people who have actually met her and touched her and as well, I'm sure she got a lot from them as well when she met them, because we do understand the power that Black women have in these movements, particularly the Black liberation movement.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think Assata's name should ever be forgotten. Mama Mudra, I'm glad that you did say that she does want to come home. Me and my husband had that conversation. I'm like, she probably don't even want to come back here after everything
Oh,
went through while she was here. But to hear you say that, yes, she does. She does miss home. She does have family here that she hasn't seen, and and that's heartbreaking too because looking at a timeline, just from Fred Hampton, with it being Black August and all, just from Fred Hampton's assassination, then you have W.L. Nolan's assassination, then you have Jonathan Jackson's assassination, and then you just have, it's just on and on and on and on how they literally tried to totally get rid of our revolutionaries. Luckily, like I said, sisters like Assata and brothers like Pete O'Neill were able to, escape from the belly of the beast. But, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that they have to be exiled because they wanted to clothe our people. They wanted to educate our people. They wanted to show us about all these capitalistic, racist, systemic things that are happening and how we can combat that, and not even needing the government's assistance to do it. And that was an issue as well. For them to totally have to illegally infiltrate all of these organizations because basically we wanted to get free is one of the most crushing things. And the fact that our children don't know about them. We asked an adult actually the other day. They didn't even know who Malcolm X was, and it made me think about a lot. It made me think about that. They are trying to bury our history, and we. And I always talk about, the vanguard, which Assata was, which Matulu was, which a lot of our revolutionaries are, and it's our job to protect it. It's our job to protect this legacy.
yeah.
Because we are in 2023, we are still having this conversation. Everybody hasn't forgotten about it. Oral tradition is our best tradition, of our greatest traditions. And I just, anybody who's coming in or watches this, I really, really, we need you to sign up for this campaign. Like we just heard, Assata wants to come home. She does, and she deserves that. The reason why we can do this work today. She's
Yeah.
a big reason why we can do this work. Her and her comrades, the connectivity, the unity that they had, the cohesiveness that they had, we need to eternalize that. We still can learn from that. I think what our elders, they're transitioning on. They're in their 60s, 70s or better. And when they go, a lot of that information goes with them, especially since we're not writing anything down, especially since we're not sitting at their feet like we should be doing, having those evening stories with the elders and the children, where this is mandatory. You're going to listen to what Big Mama and Big Daddy have to say because this is your legacy. And this, I mean, Assata and her campaign and just the whole Black liberation movement, it's our legacy. It's remains. I feel it. Like I said, I've been a revolutionary. My dad been calling me little Angela Davis since I can remember. Before I even knew who Angela Davis was, I'm like, what are you talking? I don't know. And then it made me look her up. So even when I was in elementary school, I was like, resistance against this, against whatever this stuff is. It just don't feel right to me. And I don't, I feel like I should say something about it. So again, Mama Sonovia, Mama Mudra, thank you for sharing your stories. They're magnetic. They really are. I feel like I'm there with you as you're telling these stories. But also, for everyone else, like I said, please, the International Black Freedom Alliance, like Mama Zenobia said, it is an international, it's an international movement, which is why exiles like Pete O'Neill and Assata can be where they are now because they did have that international solidarity, which is very important. Sometimes we only think about what's happening here, but if we didn't have those connections,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
he'd be rotting in jail or in jail right now, just like a lot of our political prisoners who are nameless, but we know they're dealing with these repercussions of just basically wanting to be a free new African, um, which we're dealing with today too. So again, y'all go sign up, please, for the Assata campaign. Sign up for the International Black Alliance. We need all hands on deck. We need all boots on the ground. Everybody could pick a lane, and there probably still would be no shortage of things that we can fight for. So let's get free, y'all.
Do you have how many people are in the listening audience?
So right now we're in recording, just having a conversation.
Okay.
We'll post it later on.
Okay.
We'll post it later. But we do
Yeah.
plan on people, seeing this live, and definitely what everyone had to say is very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
just want to say, I don't know in your minds, do you see Asada as Assata is an elder? So let's
Mm-hmm.
let's just be clear. I
Mm-hmm.
know for many she's still that, revolutionary flying, doing the work, but she also is an elder, as are many of those out and still behind
right.
bars.
Yeah.
That's right.
Living
Yeah, Asada
life.
should be about 76 years old now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Had a birthday, yeah.
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 It's really interesting as we talk about her, that wanting to come home specifically for family. I did recently see an interview that Kakuya, her daughter, did. She was almost in tears just thinking about how her grandchildren have never met her, And
Yeah.
so when we think about a revolutionary figure, we read the book, we hear the interviews, we also have to think about that family and longing in terms of that. In this
Yes.
struggle as well, because many of us become separated just by doing this work in general. So we can only think about what it's like being in Cuba for all of these years and separated from family and friends.
That's
You
right.
know, and
Yeah.
so one of the questions we do have is, what example do you think the United States is trying to make of Black revolutionaries like Assata Shakur? Right? COINTELPRO. I know we mentioned COINTELPRO very briefly, but the new form of COINTELPRO, this Black extremist identity, where it's even easier now for us to be surveilled and watched as activists and organizers. So, what example is the United States trying to make of her and others who are doing this work or have done this?
Mhm.
I'm just going to say just quickly that there's an agenda. It's a standing agenda. When you think about Matulu and Sekou and all how they fought, how they had people at the parole hearings to make sure that they never see the light of day. There's an agenda. When you think about, and I don't think about Trump and all of that, but know that our sister had to go deeper. Like, it matters, the agendas.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I think any way to criminalize us is in the interest of higher powers.
Mm.
However, there's some internal work that we do. There's some safety measures that we take. There's some training that we have to be involved in. Like she said, I mean, the oppression is clearly clear.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think they have an agenda, and and
Mm.
and we should also have an agenda
Mhm.
Yeah.
pro us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would agree. And that agenda is so nefarious. It is so wicked. And it's been going on for more than 500 years. A lot of times we think that a lot of this stuff began with the North Atlantic slave trade,
Mm.
but it's been going on a long time. The Destruction of Black Civilization. There's a
Mm,
book on that one too. And The Stolen Legacy. These are all books that people should read to get a bigger understanding. And if I didn't learn anything in the Nation of Islam, and I did learn a lot, but I certainly learned that, and even coming out of a Christian family, we were taught that there was a war going on between God and the devil.
mm,
And we were taught in the nation that the Black people were the first people, the original people, and that we are gods, you know.
mm,
And so, if there's a war going on between God and the devil, we have to ask ourselves who's God and who's the devil
mm,
in the flesh.
mm,
And it doesn't mean that I never did believe that every white person was the devil, nor do I believe that every Black person is, you know, behaving as a God, because we know that there was a concerted effort to destroy our knowledge of ourselves. I mean, yes, Mama Sonobi, it is an agenda. It's a highly crafted, very sophisticated agenda, but once you become aware, you can start to see it, and you don't have to fall for those tricks. You know, there's
mm,
tricks going on right now. You know, I mean, it's tricks in the food, it's tricks in the air, it's tricks in the water, because we are living in a system that is the opposite of what we represent. You know, they are individualistic. We are communal and cooperative by nature, you know. So I say that we live in a system right now that is like Babylon on steroids.
mm,
People have gotten to the point. I mean, when we did something wrong, you knew when you were doing something wrong, but you might do it anyway. But at least you knew.
mm,
Nowadays, you run into people all the time who really seem to not know just basic what's right and wrong. You know, so yes, there is an agenda. You know, people shy away sometimes and say, oh, you believe in conspiracy theories and stuff like that. Well, you know, there are basically four corporations that run the world,
mm,
and all the other corporations are subsidiaries of that, you
right.
know. So we could go really deep, you know. So killing and destroying our freedom fighters, using religion to put fear in people. And I think that that's a big thing too, that most of us are afraid of death, you know. But in reality, there's birth, there's life, there's birth, there's death, and there's rebirth, if you believe in that as a system. And so that's one of the things that I like about the Muslims. They, you know, they are not afraid to die. They feel that if they die fighting for their rights, for their liberation, if they're fighting, that they will be rewarded. And so they honor martyrdom.
yeah,
So, Mama Zenobia, you had mentioned being fearless as one of the values.
Mhm,
You know, we've got to stop this. You know, and I think that's what people enjoyed about watching that brawl. That
mm,
Black people were helping Black people. They didn't just stand back, you know,
mhm,
and just
mhm.
watch.
yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Thank you. I have to. So I don't know if there's a closing, but I hope that there's a closing because I'm just, these conversations are so valuable, and the intergenerational conversations are just so important. And we don't all look alike, we don't all think alike, but one thing for sure is that we know how to love,
Yeah.
even in the face of these magnitude of problems sometimes. But I just want to just three this is my closing, and it's Assata's words.
Mm,
I believe in living. I believe in the magic of the hands and in the wisdom of the eyes.
mm,
I believe in living. I believe in birth. I believe in the sweat of love and in the fire of truth. And I believe that a lost ship steered by tired, seasick sailors can still be guided home to port.
Yeah.
We will win.
Sure.
Yes, we
It's
will.
our duty.
Yes.
I mean, if that ain't talking life, you know, we have to talk life
Mm.
Yeah.
for our children, our grandchildren, our young folk. You know, it's just, I believe in life. And I'm thankful for this life right now, sitting here
Yes.
at my age. I'm grateful.
I say.
Thank you. I feel like that was a pretty natural closing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mama Muji, did you have any last words to share?
I say, let's carry on.
Mm.
If I had
Yeah.
the book there, I'd read the poem. Carry on to freedom. Carry
Yes.
on the tradition, y'all.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to get over.
Mm.
Ashe. Ashe.
Lastly, everybody watching or is going to watch, don't forget sign up for the like, share, follow the like Freedom Alliance page. Please on Twitter. And you can also sign up for the IBFA at the IBFA.org. This work is important. This campaign is ongoing. We can't stress that enough. Revolution is an ongoing action. It's not one and done. It's a continuous act. And we cannot forget her name and so many others who were forced to leave home. Because of fighting for us, honestly and truly, that's the best way I could put it. For
Yeah.
fighting for what we're doing right now, Mama Muja, Mama Sonovia, you as well. Some of the biggest foot soldiers out there who are still doing it. We appreciate you so much. And Assata, if you're watching, if you ever see this video, we
Yes.
love you. We love you.
We love you.
Welcome
You
you.
are.
We are going to get you pardoned. We're going to get you home.
Yes.
We're going to try to see this in our lifetime, Mama. But we love you so much. I say, y'all. Thank you.
Ashe.
Okay. Thank you. It was a pleasure learning from you all. Oh my God.
Yes.
It was a pleasure to have been invited, and keep us abreast of the work, and we'll figure out ways to get plugged in.
Yeah.
All right.
Kim and Latrice, y'all did an awesome job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was a little nervous.
And we're hoping that this could be a continuous conversation.
Yeah, I think it should be.
Yeah, we think it's going to catch. It's going to catch on. Like I said, multi-generational. Get some of our brothers in here too. Our
Yeah.
children
Yes.
here. Our youth. Yes, to see what's on our mind, to see how we can get cohesive and getting free. We got to talk to each other to be able to do that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
should also mention that I'm actually writing a book on Assata Shakur. I just signed my book contract with Princeton Press. It's called The Black Underground, Assata Shakur and Global Freedom Struggles. And I've interviewed some people who have met her. And so I would love to interview you
Beautiful.
all, one-on-one about your
Beautiful.
own radicalism and your experience meeting Assata and what that means to you.
Okay.
Beautiful.
I'll get in contact with you.
Okay.
And I'm proud of all of you. Thank y'all so much. Y'all
Yeah.
are doing this. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing the youngest person here, because though that's the group right there that we got to really save. You
Mm,
know, they're
Mhm.
still young enough to be a little more pliable.
mm,
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
even though we don't give up on anybody, we never know. You know
Mhm.
when I mean some of our most profound and committed freedom fighters, like Malcolm, for instance, came out of a difficult
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
So many.
So thank you for your presence. What was your name again?
Latrice.
Latrice. Thank you so much, Latrice. Carry on, sister.
I
yes.
will. Thank you. Thank you.
Peace and blessings.
All right. Love y'all. Peace.
Peace.
All right.
Peace.